Sadly, in 2015, I suffered a deterioration in my health. Is my life and my experiences to date, and it kind of left me stuck.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Sphere of Success, the podcast that looks at challenge and adversity in business and how, as business leaders and entrepreneurs, we can alchemize that into positivity, growth, innovation, and creativity. And today, I would love to take you through a very, very important theme because I have a fantastic guest who can talk about his own experience and what he's doing, which is making huge impact. We're going to be looking at defying limits, how disability, adversity, and empowerment fuel entrepreneurial success. And today I am joined by Matthew Monaghan. Now, Matthew was born with a rare muscle condition that doctors said would limit his life, but instead it pushed him to defy expectations. Despite years of setbacks, he learned to walk again and even became a licensed pilot, which I think is amazing, turning one of his biggest challenges into his greatest source of strength. Today, he uses his story to inspire others to break free, I'll get my teeth in, free from their own barriers and reach new heights. He's passionate about showing the resilience isn't just personal, it's the fuel for success in business and beyond. Matthew, welcome. It's great to have you on the Sphere of Success podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a real pleasure. And what I'd love for you to do, because I know people would be really interested to hear your story in more detail, can you tell the audience what happened to you and how you've overcome it and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I was born with a very rare form of muscular dystrophy. So the prognosis or the outlook was never very positive. There was a lot of limitations placed on that. Things like, I suppose, all aspects of life, not being able to walk, limitations on career, prospects, things like that. But despite all of that, those predictions, I did learn to walk. I went to normal school, qualified, got great, great achievements, grades, qualifications, and went on to live a very normal life. And then sadly in 2015, I suffered a deterioration in my health, quite profound, and it kind of left me stuck. Um, and I felt like I was meeting all of those predictions that had been placed on me when I was a child. But rather than let that define me or how my future looked, I eventually just decided that I wasn't going to accept that narrative and I was going to push past. And that was whenever I stumbled upon a charity that helps people with disabilities learn how to fly. The charity's called FSDP, and they awarded me a scholarship in 2017. It's a taster, if you like. It's to try and show people with disabilities what they're capable of. And it was around 20 hours of flight training. I got the bug. I got addicted to flying at that time and decided that I wanted more. Um, and that was whenever I pushed on and continued my training, qualified to fly, and that's when I got my pilot's license. So that leads on to a lot of other things in career and in my working life and what that led on to. It was kind of like it was fuel for what happened going forward. I still fly. I had good success career-wise in finance, and ultimately it led to me realizing that my experience is something that I can use going forward to help people that maybe feel that same limitation on themselves, that people from all walks of life and all spheres that can maybe take something from my journey and realize that there's potential whenever there's loss.
This is so interesting and well done. Congratulations for fighting huge battle and not taking adversity and sitting down and saying that's it, which I think is something which a lot of people could take solace from who are experiencing whatever the adversity might be, that actually sometimes it can be the making of us if we look at things in a way which helps us to see opportunity and to push ourselves. And I'd like to follow that theme a little, if I may, with regards to how you think that mindset has helped you from a business perspective and the entrepreneurial things and this public speaking, etc., that you do. What was it about that that helped push doors open and give you this success in what you're doing now?
I think learning to fly was a bit of a catalyst, but it wasn't the entire picture. So once I learned to fly, I realized that I had potential in the working environment as well, in the private sector. So I ended up working in finance, and with that came I became an advocate in the companies that I worked for, in their specifically within their disabilities spheres there. So within the companies that I ended up working for, I was able to become an advocate for colleagues within that business who maybe felt that they had landed a role or had been successful in in stepping into that world, but maybe didn't feel confident going forward and pushing themselves, stretching themselves for, to achieve more within the working place. And that was very it was good for me to be able to use my experience to show that disability isn't, it's only one small factor in terms of it's not a barrier to to employment and to employability. Um, and I spent some time in finance, and then eventually I realized that I had a bigger purpose, and that's whenever I decided to, first of all, decided to write a book. I wanted to write my memoir, which I've done. I've completed, and it's not published yet, but it will be very soon. And alongside of that, I wanted to become a voice for for people like me who did feel stuck. So that's whenever I entered public speaking, and I ended up speaking for a company that I did work for, one of the big four. I returned as as an ex-employee and was able to give a keynote speech to one of their teams about resilience and how to empower themselves to achieve, not just individually but as a team. And I think my story really resonated because I was a I was an ex-employee who was able to show that even outside of the company, I was able to achieve something quite remarkable. And I think the talk really resonated with them.
And what would you say? Because you've talked about mindset, you've talked about coming back and speaking as a keynote speaker to your former employers, and you were thinking that that resonated with them. Then what would you say would be the pop misconceptions that the business world has about disability and having somebody who is less able-bodied than perhaps the able-bodied person that they sit next to?
I think having any condition, there is an element that you do feel like you have to try harder. And in a way, that's an extra skill or attribute I feel helps in employment because you inherently feel like you have to try that little bit harder. You do prove yourself more. It is a mindset. There is a mind. I feel like that you have to adjust your mindset and really tell yourself that you're worthy of the promotion or the job or the role that you're aspiring to enter. But it is about also telling yourself that the disability isn't going to be a barrier. And I can understand that in terms of for me anyway, it may not be accurate and true in the working world, but as a disabled person, there is an internal feeling that you your condition may limit you in terms of productivity or quality or the ability to do the work at the pace as our non-able our able-bodied cohorts. So it's about for me it was about realizing that most of the time it's about the mind and the brain that you're bringing to the role. The body is just the vessel. And it does that also applies to non-visible disabilities as well. I like to say that there isn't there's no such thing as disability, that we're all just differently abled, you know.
I love that. There's no such thing as disability. We're just differently abled. Yes, yes, I think it's a very good way of putting it. And thinking about being different and differently abled, what would you say to employers that could assist having differently abled people from the perspective of accessibility within the business? What was it that you feel that sometimes gets overlooked, or that you think, some simple changes that don't necessarily have to cost a lot of money, but actually could be far more inclusive as terms of accessibility for people who are differently abled?
In business, I think employing somebody who is differently abled or has a condition, you're actually bringing a very special kind of talent into your workforce. And with certain elements and certain changes to support that, you're actually enabling that person to work at the same level and the same rank as their able-bodied colleagues or peers. And for me, I've worked in private sector and I've had those changes implemented, and some are just some are quite, I suppose you could say, significant, but some are very, very simple. Um, for me, I worked in a big finance company in a city centre location, and the building was a very modern and that grand building with you know it was a nice location, but the doors in the building were all heavy doors with locked access in and out. And for me, all I needed was one floor with accessible bathrooms where those doors were kept open, that I didn't have to push the door in and out, because that trip to the bathroom and back was taking 5, 10 minutes out of my day each time. It's a simple change and it was easily implemented, and that change enabled me to perform at the exact same level and pace as my able-bodied colleagues. There were other changes made, like having, for those of us who work from home or work from home and in the office, I was allowed to have a laptop at home and a laptop in the office, so that I didn't have to carry equipment in and out of the office every day, which would have added to my fatigue. So there are changes that can be made, and sometimes it just takes for the company or the employer to think a little bit outside the box, or ask those questions, those teasing questions from the employee, that really makes them think about what they need to work and what obstacles they face in daily life, because it's not always something that we think about day in, day out.
Yes, I think you've hit the nail on the head, is actually having a dialogue and creating a two-way conversation that actually then brings the person who will benefit from those changes to mind, and can actually create a source of innovation and creativity throughout the company, so that that person feels things are easier, etc. And as you said, it doesn't necessarily have to be big changes. It can be relatively small, a laptop, some lighter doors, etc. Obviously, they need to meet safety requirements and etc. for fire and what have you, but it's surprisingly simple. How do you feel that technology, with the accessibility of perhaps different things for differently able people, might not be able to hear as well, see as well, what would you say to employers there who are thinking about the wonderful talents that people like this bring to the business with regards to technology and how that perhaps could be more accessible for them.
I suppose for I would encourage employers to make sure that they make a conscious effort to know what's out there to help employees with conditions like that. There's so many tools available. There's induction hearing loops for the hard of hearing. I worked in a company that we needed to. It was a finance company, and we had to take a lot of calls to customers. And I was in this company. I was a disability advocate or champion, and we had a colleague that was hard of hearing, um, completely deaf in one ear and partially deaf in another, and she wore hearing aids, but the telephones they weren't compatible, and we used headsets, and they also weren't compatible, and we hadn't came across this before. The company hadn't, and I did my research and contacted charities and hard of hearing charities, specifically, and we found that there is equipment out there that can link or route the calls through what she already used or through her hearing device. And it took a little bit of time to find that solution, but the solution was there. And you mentioned empowerment. Once we found that I remember the colleague very clearly, the smile on her face when she realized that it wasn't gonna be a an end to her career, but it was certainly gonna impact it in ways that it wouldn't have impacted others. A different role or potentially not getting exposure to that line of work to give her the skills to move forward or move sideways or move up. So when we found that solution and I presented it to her, the smile on her face she was, you couldn't have given her something more special than being able to do the job to the same level and skill and ability as her colleagues. And I remember that was whenever I seen empowerment because we gave her exactly what she needed to operate at the same level as everybody else. And she, at a point, maybe didn't think it was possible. And it wasn't even on the company either. It was something that it just took that little bit of extra time to find the solution. So, as you mentioned, dialogue, but also sometimes it's worth taking that extra little bit of time to empower a colleague. And that's whenever the company finds that they'll get their true potential out of every employee.
Yes, I can see that. And how did that help with the culture of the team and the wider culture, knowing that within their business and their unit, etc., there can be differently able people and that everybody's working to the optimum standard?
Well, as you mentioned, that's exactly what this company and most companies are about. They're about teamwork, and we all have individual performance and targets, but there's also the team performance, and it cascades down to the department performance, and then ultimately up to the company performance. So it's mutually beneficial for everyone to be operating at full capacity and at their full ability. But colleagues naturally in teams, they do also 9 times out of 10 they want to help each other and they don't like to see another colleague stuck for a reason that's it's unnecessary. So that culture around I was a colleague, I was doing the same job as that lady, I just happened to be the department's disability champion or advocate. But there was a personal element for me too. I wanted to see her find a solution. And our manager and our department manager wanted the solution. It was everyone kind of rallied around finding a reason to help this lady. There were options where she could have performed different roles, but that doesn't help the next deaf employee that might come along or the next person who feels that that actually is the role that they want to perform the work that they want to get exposed to. So it does it encouraged other colleagues to be able to say, we have a friend that might need the support, or maybe have somebody who wants to work for the company that maybe feels it might not be possible because of limitations that they have. So it kind of snowballs, and when the word spreads that a company is willing to put those extra measures in, it also reflects very good in the company because it shows that they're inclusive, and it creates access to colleagues that maybe would consider roles like that for their own limits.
I can see that being a great opportunity to get great talent and in an environment where it's extremely difficult to get really well qualified, high caliber talent that wants to stay with you, that loyalty that I think then that you're showing is, as a business, going to be rewarded in your bottom line by the fact that you're going to get incredible talent, you're going to get loyalty, because I'm sure with people who are differently abled, I just love that phrase, are going to be using it now. I think it's great. When they find a company that they belong to and that they feel they can have optimum performance with, then they're likely to want to stay for a longer period than they would if they felt, no, I've got to go somewhere else because I'm just not being able to integrate or do the job that I was destined to do. So ultimately, I think that could actually be a real great point from a commercial perspective, from the bottom line for businesses to think, you know what, let's think about making sure that the differently abled amongst our company, or that we attract differently abled individuals with those skills, etc., to come on board because we appreciate how much they can give, not just to the business, but from the wider ecosystem of the stakeholders and the teams that they're working within, to give that different thought process, sometimes give them that different dynamic, and also the fact of that level of, as you say, if they're high achieving, highly motivated people, isn't that just the type of people that you want in your business?
Exactly, exactly. Couldn't agree more. And
Mm.
you don't want to miss, as you say, you could be missing talent that is there that just needs a slight tweak to enable them to feel comfortable and supported.
Yes, and the other thing as well as this is to have the members of the team like this within the employees, but also if we're thinking about how that then can impact the client experience, because the more people you have who are differently abled, they can speak within the organization and be a voice to actually say, well, actually, if we think about our customers, this is what we can help our customers with on the other side of things. So you get another perspective to be able to take advantage and add value to a group perhaps that you weren't optimizing before.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, that I think that's amazing that there's that synergy and that interconnectedness that doesn't just stay from an internal perspective, but that can actually, from a supplier perspective, from the client side of things, the customers, it seems to be a very well-rounded opportunity for businesses to really thrive and grow with this inclusivity that perhaps just on a superficial level, perhaps not knowing so much about it could feel a little daunting to start with. But then when you start to look at the benefits of this, it starts to speak for itself.
Really does, and it pays dividends literally and figuratively because it's the company learns a lot about their own workforce, and as you rightly said, the other side of the fence about their own customers who maybe have conditions, and the amount of times I had in the workplace where we encountered something and it was a business decision between consumer and company, or consumer and client, and we went and said we have Mr. Blogs or Mrs. Blog, but if you ask them what their opinion on stunts, they may have encountered this, and without that talent, you wouldn't have that touch point to be able to go and see how would you approach this? What's that you want to ask the questions of people who have the experience, and with disability becomes a level of experience that you don't always find everywhere else. So absolutely, it's it it makes business sense.
Yeah, I'm really getting the picture. And of course, we have the difference between seen and unseen disability. So we're thinking about neurodivergence and other conditions which may not manifest. I was speaking to a gentleman just recently who's an advocate for helping people who have diabetes were in the workplace. It could be a lady with menopause issues, etc. All of this group have so much to give because it's not until you go through something through lived experience can you actually then help your business, help the people around you to come up with different views and make different decisions based on the lived experience of the people that we work with, that we do business with, etc. So I think that's an excellent way of looking at this, is that you're actually getting that integral view from somebody who's actually got that lived experience.
It is, it's smart business, I feel, because you don't, if everyone was the same, if everyone was different, we'd all be the same and vice versa. So you want that experience, you want that niche element because it helps the company whenever they inevitably do come across a scenario where they need that perspective. And that's we're all different, and I think it takes that difference to enable us all to learn from each other.
Absolutely. And thinking about, we've talked a lot about businesses who have staff. What happens when somebody who is differently abled and they're thinking to themselves, I'd love to start my own business? What would you say to people like that who are looking along an entrepreneurial journey as business owners themselves, who are differently abled?
I'm gonna say the inevitable, and I'm gonna say don't don't let it put you off. Don't let that daunt your or a f- I suppose it's a business, starting a business for anybody is daunting, but again, there's probably going to be that extra level of nerves or apprehension if someone has a condition or is disabled or differently abled, because again, there's all the elements with, well, some of the elements that come with working for an employer, they can transfer to starting your own business. So the access needs, the physical needs, and even with non-visible disabilities, um, clarity of thought and trying to keep your attention span and your thoughts on the right trajectory without becoming too distracted. There was all of those elements transfer over, but again, I feel like it also the same rules apply. It just is gonna come with an element of adaptation. So like I hope that people with disabilities can see that again with business, with employment, normal employment, being employed under a company, you starting your own business brings another perspective. So if anything, that you could argue that there's a slight advantage because you're bringing a perspective to starting a company or starting a business, but you're already starting with that knowledge, with the knowledge of whenever you do come, when that business owner comes to the point of employing staff and accessibility, empowerment, and inclusion, that knowledge is already there. So there's going to be parts of starting the business that might be a little bit more challenging. Things like the physical aspect and uh, the, the heavy lifting, I suppose. But I think that will be counteracted, or you'll make up for that in the fact that you're beginning a business with all of the knowledge of inclusion and not judging your talent based on their physical or mental disabilities. I can't say for certain how I if bottom line, if it's more complicated or less, but I know that there's opportunity out there, and if anything, someone with a condition or disability starting a business has their own niche. You're you c- I know of a lady, sorry, a lady that's starting a business and her business is built upon or will be founded or built upon accessible clothing. So she has taken the challenge that a lot of disabled people have, people with joint issues, or I have contractures, my joints don't fully extend, and sometimes putting clothes on and off can be difficult. She has built a business around that, so she's actually used the disability or a disability or an element of disability and created the business from that. So um the clothes will have, quick release, or where we would all have normal seams on our shirts or trousers. At those seams there will be magnets or clasps so that the clothes can form around the person rather than have to be. So she has created an idea out of an everyday. So yes, she's going to have the challenges with the business and the general day-to-day running, the overheads and the actual running of the business itself. But really, she's creating a product that's there's a need there, and it's also a product that stems from or is born from disability itself.
That's so lovely to hear in the sense that it was because of her adversity and her differently abled perspective that she's running a thriving business, helping others in a much needed space. And when you mentioned that, I suddenly thought, yeah, I'd not really ever thought about what just getting dressed and undressed and the experience of clothes shopping in that sense as well. That's a whole other kind of thing as well. If it's in store or how the packaging comes, how everything is there from the manufacturers, etc. If you're buying online, it's very interesting to actually see how we can build businesses again from our lived experience, from our personal experience, that nobody else would have really had that take on it but her. So, congratulations. I think that's an absolutely stellar idea. And then from you as well, which I mean, you're a pilot, you're an author, you're a public speaker, you're a linguist, you're an entrepreneur. I mean, the list goes on. What's next for Matthew?
So I hope to encourage others to chase their dreams. Flying will always be there for me. It's my passion. My book hopefully will lead to a second and third potentially. Because in life I think experiences never stop. You never stop living. So my book is my life and my experiences to date. But there's gonna be more. Naturally there's gonna be more. And then yes, public speaking is really it's I get something amazing from inspiring others, and I've always said that if I can end my life, finish my life, sorry, having changed just one life, then it will all have been worthwhile. So yeah, for me it would be about encouraging others to see their true potential. And I hope to do that in the future through workshops and through my own experience and encouraging others to see the challenges that I have faced and how I've overcame them. And again, despite the odds, or because with it comes an element of a little element of, if there's a small element of honesty, and you say, which a lot of people don't, the things that I've overcame at the time I genuinely didn't know if I would overcome them. And that's okay to say that. It's okay to say, I didn't know if I was going to be capable of that, because it was only after overcoming it that I learned that I could, and that's a learned behavior that's developed through lived experience. So for me, I hope to, yeah, one day a TED Talk. I would love to be able to do a TED Talk and really deliver a big speech to a large crowd of people so that people can hear about my journey. Because yes, it's personal to me, and it is my journey, but all I really want from the journey is to know and to show people what I was able to achieve with the right support and the right mindset. Um, and again, it comes back to empowerment. It's empowering to know that there's elements of your life that you can share with someone that helps them see what they can achieve. Because I think it would scare me to think how many people are out there that are sitting thinking, no, I'm not going to try that, or I'm not going to go for that role, or try that hobby, or apply for that promotion, because they think that there is an element about them that wouldn't make them worthy or capable. So that's what I would like to bring to the world, just belief.
Well, you're an extremely good advocate of that and a superb role model for people. Um, able-bodied, differently able people. I think we can all take something from your journey. And even if it's, well, if Matthew can do it, I can do it. That's it, isn't it? Sometimes it takes somebody with courage and resilience that you've shown over and over again, just not giving up and just carrying on, even if it's small steps. You're a living embodiment of what it really is to have that mindset of growth, development, innovation, creativity, putting yourself in situations where some people would fear to tread, but could see you and think, well, actually, you're treading that path. So I truly believe you're a great trailblazer, great advocate for what you're doing. So thank you so much. It's been a privilege to have you on the show. And how can people get hold of you? Because I reckon people will be thinking, I'd love to hear more about Matthew's journey and indeed how to get hold of your book. Perhaps it might be a little bit early because I know it's not been launched yet, but you could also fill them in the loop with that too. So, yes, how can people get hold of you, Matthew?
Yeah, so I am quite, I share a lot of my story and journey on social media. So TikTok, Instagram, it's Flight Deck Matt, as in flight deck. So Flight Deck Matt is my handle. And the book, I have a mock, if you'd like to see, that's a mock of what the book will look like.
Rate of progress. Wow, very powerful cover. Ooh,
Yeah,
that's going to do well. Fantastic.
that's the book. And yeah, reach out if anyone has, I get messages all the time from people asking for advice in aviation, advice in how to push themselves, or who maybe just wants to know if they could have a talk. So yeah, happy to chat to anyone that wants to reach out. And yeah, my book should hopefully be on the shelves very soon.
Well, that's great. Thank you. And I know that you're available for public speaking events and smaller groups, etc. So, yes, do be in touch with Matthew. I think he's got such a lovely way about him. And I know that he's got some superb information, all gathered from the real world in his own situation. And I think that's a great place to be because somebody who's been through it, warts and all, as they say, I think can add great value. So thank you, Matthew. It's been fantastic having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
And to everybody listening, thank you as well. And viewing this channel, we always support uh, love your support. I mean, it's just been a privilege to have Matthew. Again, do let us know your stories because I'm sure that there's something there that can be a gift to somebody if you put them in the comments and like and subscribe and share with others because I think this is an amazing episode to be able to help businesses really see the power and the empowerment of people that really can make a talented difference and a bottom line difference to our businesses. So until we see you again, be successful and take care, everybody. See you soon. Bye bye now.